All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about something really special, the timeless craft of shaping wood by hand. For just a minute, let's forget about all the noise and the dust from power tools. We're diving back into the fundamentals, that pure connection between you, your tool, and a piece of wood.
So how do you do it? How do you take a totally plain, simple block of wood and turn it into something beautiful? It's a question artisans have been asking for centuries. How do you find that shape that's just waiting inside? What's the secret to turning it into, say, a piece of furniture, a cool tool handle, or even a work of art?
Well, the answer is actually simpler and honestly way more rewarding than you might think. It really all starts with hand tools. See, they give you this incredible level of control. You can feel the wood, you can make these super precise, deliberate changes. It's all about skill, not just brute force.
All right, so let's get into it. For this little explainer, we're going to focus specifically on using tools that aren't powered. The whole goal here is to learn how to cut, shape, and get wood ready for a project safely and accurately. You could almost think of it as learning the basic grammar of woodworking.
Okay, before we even think about making that first cut, we gotta talk about the ground rules. Look, every craft has them, and they're not just there for fun. They exist for one big reason, to make sure you're safe and your work is high quality.
It really all boils down to three simple things. First up, you've got to choose the right tool for the job. That's key. Second, and this one's a big deal, it's totally non-negotiable, you have to work safely. And third, everything you do should be about making your work neat and accurate. So don't think of these as suggestions, okay? They're more like essential rules that are going to keep you from making mistakes and from getting hurt.
All right, now that we've got the rules down, let's get to the fun part, actually shaping some wood. This is where the magic happens, right? It's where that rough block starts to turn into something with real form and character.
So, what's the very first thing you do? Before a single tool touches the wood to make a cut, you do your layout. It sounds fancy, but it's just the simple but totally critical act of marking your plan right onto the wood. Think of it like your roadmap. You wouldn't start a road trip without one, right? And here's a perfect example of just how simple but powerful this is. You know that little pencil line you draw before you start sawing? That's layout. That one tiny step is everything. It's the difference between a messy, crooked cut and one that's perfectly straight. It's literally the secret ingredient to getting accurate work.
Okay, so once we've got our basic shape cut out, we can start to refine it. And a really common way to do that is by creating something called a chamfer. I know, it sounds a little technical, but it's not. It's just a small, angled cut you make on a corner or an edge. But why bother?
Well, this is the perfect example of why. See, when you cut off those sharp 90-degree edges, it's not just about making it look nice. It actually makes the whole piece more durable. It's way less likely to splinter. Plus, it's a whole lot safer and just more comfortable to handle. It's one of those little details that really shows a thoughtful finish.
But what happens when you're not working with straight lines? What about all those graceful curves? Well, for that, you need a specialist. And that's where this cool little tool, the Spokeshave, comes into play. It's designed for one specific thing: shaping and smoothing curved wood surfaces.
Think about the beautiful curve on a chair leg, or maybe the smooth, rounded handle on a tool. That's where a Spokeshave shines. What's so cool about it is that it's kind of like a tiny little plane that you can steer. It lets you follow all these complex curves and turn something that was blocky and rough into a shape that's really flowing and organic.
All right, now we're moving on to the real fine-tuning. And for that, we have the chisel. This is where a woodworker's skill really comes out. It's a tool that's all about incredible precision and finesse.
Now, to use a chisel right, you've really got to understand the wood itself. There are two ways you can cut, either along the grain or across it. And trust me, this is not a random choice. When you cut with the grain, the chisel just glides. It's super smooth, like a boat on water, and you get this perfect little shaving. But if you try to go against it, oh man, you can feel the tool just fighting you, digging in and tearing up the wood fibers. So yeah, respecting the grain is absolutely everything.
And that brings us to a really key chisel technique called paring. Now, this isn't about just chopping away wood. Paring is, well, it's an art. It's the art of taking off the tiniest, thinnest shavings of wood with total control, a lot of the time just using hand pressure. So where would you need that kind of insane precision?
Right here. This is it. When you're fine-tuning a joint, paring is what lets you shave off just a whisper of wood. We're talking paper thin, to get that perfect, seamless, gap-free fit. It's the one technique that really takes a project from good to absolutely fantastic.
Okay, so we've shaped our individual pieces. Now what? How do we actually bring them all together? Well, this last set of skills is all about getting the wood ready for a really strong, clean assembly.
And a huge part of assembly is, you guessed it, making holes. It doesn't matter if you're using screws or these little wooden pegs called dowels to join your pieces. First, you need a way to drill a really precise hole. That's what's going to give you that strong, secure connection you're looking for. But wait, we can take that one step further for a really professional touch. After you drill a hole, you can create what's called a countersink. See that little cone shape at the top of the hole? That's there for a very specific reason. It lets the head of a screw sit perfectly flat, or flush, with the wood. It can even sit just a tiny bit below the surface.
And you know what? The result of that one little detail is huge. You're not going to have screw heads sticking out, snagging on your clothes. It just creates this seamless, totally professional look. At the end of the day, it makes the whole thing safer and way neater. It's a tiny step, but it screams high-quality craftsmanship.
So there you go. Layout, chamfering, pairing, countersinking. These aren't just a bunch of fancy vocabulary words to memorize. They're the real foundational techniques you need to shape wood by hand. You've got the roadmap now, from a plain block of wood all the way to a finished piece. So the only question left is, what are you going to create?